Hey guys, your favorite blockhead has some very exciting news. I want to let you guys know that your favorite blockhead is now a proud member of the Yogis Podcast Network. YFB is proud to bring you more content from my friends Mike and Toria over at the Nightly Rant. So you can follow their shows on the Yogis Podcast Network, which will include Peeling the Orange, which will deal with all the issues in Orange County, the Nightly Rant, Liberty Revealed, and even one of my favorites, the Elite Podcast Academy, where you can learn everything you want to know about being a professional podcaster, be able to reach more people and give your influence, even work on monetization and on podcast notes, you name it. This course will walk you through how to be a better podcaster. And your favorite blockhead is always very blessed to mention his membership with the Dos Leprechauns Podcast Network. You can find those links on the show, and you can always find Dos Leprechauns on iTunes and on YouTube. That being said, what do you say we go ahead and start the show, shall we? Broadcasting live. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for stopping by once again. You are listening to your favorite blockhead, the only podcast in the podcasting world that can somehow incorporate the Peanuts comic strip 1 minute and then be talking about MMA and warriors inside the octagon the next. Guys, once again, the MMA gods and the podcasting gods have shined down on this little bitty podcast you're listening to. The stars have aligned perfectly, and we have guest number 9 with us tonight. Super excited to have him on. Before we get started, guys, I want to talk to you a little bit about my friends over at Koa Coffee. Direct from Hawaii, harvested only when the beans are cherry red, so that every roast is sure to have the taste of aloha spot on every time. They're featured in Forbes' top 10 coffees of the world and is referred to by Forbes as the best coffee in America. Your favorite blockhead personally recommends the ground dark Vienna roast. That's one of my favorites. So as I bring this back up, make sure you go to the blog page, check out the links that are there for Koa Coffee. Now, we recently talked to Smiling Sam Alvey of Team Quest, and somehow, some way, this gentleman has agreed to come on and give 20 minutes of his time, and I am super thrilled to share with you UFC veteran, winner of the Ultimate Fighter 2, and current-day Team Quest member, the one and only Joe Daddy, Joe Stevenson. Joe, welcome to the Blockhead Hour.
Oh, thanks for having me, Brian. I'm very thankful that you were able to work around my schedule and happy to be a part of it.
Oh, definitely. Definitely didn't want to ruin the chance to speak to a gentleman who I've followed for a few years. Now, the reason how this kind of came to be is right now I'm still kind of pinching myself that Sam Alvey and yourself would take the time to talk to a common man podcaster. But the reason that it came up was because we were discussing on when Sam Alvey was on, he mentioned your name. And of all things I would ask him, I would say, is this the same Joe Stevenson that holds the record for the Scarecrow Challenge? 204 laps around Mike Whitehead. Is that the same guy? And he said, that's the one. And he's very proud of that accomplishment. So for those podcasting listeners that don't understand that, I think you can do a better job of explaining that story. So could you walk us through and go down memory lane and tell us a little bit about the Scarecrow Challenge that Randy Couture put you and Mike Whitehead through?
Well, in the beginning of the Ultimate Fighter, we'd have competitions, and the winner of the competition would be able to pick the next fight, which is really important for as far as strategy goes, because as we all know, fighting is style. So like one style beats another style. It's really rarely that there's, oh, this guy's unbeatable. Like very often it's one style beats another style. And it's just the classic importance of being able to pick that next fight. So the competition is your partner has to stand like a scarecrow, and you must rotate around their body without them helping you, like grabbing you, leaning over, things like that. And you have to use your whole body to do this. It's actually very easy if you have a good understanding of your body and how your body's supposed to work. It's like using a guard to connect yourself to your opponent's body. And then so you're not just using your arms and you're not just using your legs to rotate around the person. It's a continual, like, my legs are engaged at the same time my arms are engaged. I'm finding crevices in the body of my partner or posts such as like the thigh. And you'll rotate. You'll start switching from butterfly guard to half guard to all the way around to the back. And you use your body's position to rotate. I believe I got 204 rotations. I remember after 100 thinking, it's very difficult to do, and telling Matt, hey, can I stop? There's no way they're going to be able to do this. And Matt was like, after 100 more, you can stop. And so I continued to do another 100, and at 200, Matt said, all right, well, you can just go until, you're done. And so I just busted out 4 real quick, and my body gave out. I ended up walking away with skin ulcers. I had staph as I was doing it, and Mike Whitehead, I believe his arches dropped because I was not a 55er at the time or a 45er. I was a 170 pounder, so I was cutting probably from 185 to make 170, and it was very difficult. You definitely need a very good partner. You definitely need to have a strong mind and a strong will and a strong body to be able to do that.
Right, and that's what I depicted when I watched it, Joe, was because, it is a competition, and Matt Hughes is who you're referring to, and of course Rich Franklin was the other coach, and they just forfeited because they're like, I don't want to wear out my guys too much, even though you're like, I'm glad I won, but you're like, okay, medic, and Michael Whitehead's back was sore for a long time, but again, it was just a very interesting competition that I saw, because everybody that's tried to do it online, the most I've seen a guy do is maybe 7 of them, and then he is like puffing wind, and he's gassed at the very end of that, so I'm going, this is kind of a big deal for him to be able to do 204 laps around a heavyweight's body. So that's kind of a big deal to help my listeners understand that, just in case I've got some that are casual fans, some that aren't. And for those that are interested, again, so you've been on 2 of them. You've been on the second Ultimate Fighter, and I believe you went to Redemption. Is that correct? I think the 25th one. You can walk us through those experiences.
Yeah, well, the first Ultimate Fighter I had retired because I had a thing involving where mixed martial arts kind of, and that life kind of really hindered my ability to raise a family, and to it really hurt my home life, and so I kind of stopped completely from doing that. And then I ended up going to Vegas to work on my black belt under Mark Lehman. And as I lived in Vegas, I had stopped fighting for about 2 years, and Joe Silva would come in and he'd see how I was doing with everyone, and he would be like, wow, you have to do the next Ultimate Fighter, because they had already done season 1. And I was like, well, okay, and so I went in to the first Ultimate Fighter really not with a lot of cares at all, because, I knew I was good, and I wasn't really trying to – I had already fallen in and out of love with the sport and went through some major life events that, really shake you. And so it was crazy, because in the midst of going back and doing it, I fell back in love with the sport. And come before the finale, I wanted it. I was like, everything that I had worked for since I was 11 years old had pretty much led up to this day. And I remember crying a little bit after winning it, and just being so emotionally drained physically, that it was great. Not very many people prepare you for the fame. If you don't have a good manager, a person in front of you telling you where to put your money, like, hey, you should probably put away 60% of your money. I remember, right after the Ultimate Fighter, I was convinced to buy these 3 houses because I had great credit and stuff. And one of the people that convinced me to buy houses at the same time ended up going to jail for I think 25 years or something.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and the market crashed. I remember my house next door to my house that I just bought for $340,000. The store sold for like 115, and I tried to renegotiate, and eventually, had to let the house go. And I had my parents. I bought them a house, and they moved in with my sister. My sister moved in with them, and they were all teaming up to make a payment. And then they got in a fight with each other, and they let that house go. And I was stuck probably like 40 or 60,000 into that house. And then there was another like investment property that just went from being like a $500,000 home to being like not a $500,000
right.
It was some crazy things to work through, but luckily I did have fighting, and I was able to just kind of bury my head into, well, it's okay, I'll make this work because I'm going to go do this next fight, and I'll be able to secure my family and my bills, and just work hard from there.
Exactly. It just hurts me to think about you had to go through the 2008 recession on into the recovery of that time. That's something that I never even thought through in my mind. That one's kind of floored me at this point. So to identify with that. Yeah.
I think a lot of us in America had to go and it really led to reevaluate life. Where was I spending my money? Why wasn't I more level-headed? Why am I living out of my means? I don't need this. I need this. So at that point, I was still drinking, and I drank pretty heavily. I mean, I drank enough to where I was a very functional alcoholic, but I allowed myself to escape and get numb through alcohol. Luckily, I had a friend, and I went to some meetings that was able to put me on the right path with some great people. And I ended up, next October is 8 years sober. And I'm excited about that part of my life.
Absolutely, you should be, Joe. That's very uplifting just for my listeners also, because really my demographics are 25 to 35-year-old males, and everything you just shared. I mean, you've always been pretty open about your rehab and what you've gone through with alcoholism, but it's just refreshing to hear that from you on this show, because you never know who might be tuning into this tonight that needs to hear somebody who had been at the top of your game the way you were to be able to experience those ups and downs. So I thank you for being just your openness on that one, sir.
Oh, no worries. Man, if I think about it now, I wonder how successful I could have been in my prime not drinking. The first year I stopped drinking, I ended up doing really well commentating for some good organizations like King of the Cage.
That's right, yes.
And the fans liked me commentating. I was able to move on to, I got a call from Greg Jackson. He said, would you be interested in teaching some actors? They liked me so much that they allowed me to do all of this. I did all of the fight choreography. I helped with being an MMA technical advisor. I got to play myself in a show called Kingdom, which was just amazing. And it really went with a lot of the parallels of fighting that people don't see. A lot of the crazy life that we live that no one gets to really understand or see. The behind the scenes stuff. And I know it was a fictional show, but it was definitely based loosely on a lot of people's lives and stories that was, that Byron Velasco was able to put his own twists and theories and thoughts and feelings. And I mean, to get in his head is just amazing. The cast, the people, it was a very good experience in my life. And if I wouldn't have been sober, probably wouldn't have been capable of doing what it takes to get the position. They required a resume. I was like, what's a resume? They asked for, what I would be teaching the actors. So I broke it down into we did a 2-week seminar pretty much, and I broke it down to every hour what they would be doing each hour, and really got in depth. I put those actors through rigorous like training, and by the end of it, my goal was to have him come up and train next to my fighters, and I couldn't tell the difference. I was happy. I was very happy, because you can't teach a fighter a heart or chin, and for them to be able to go in there and to go be put through rounds and put through just tough training, and to look through the room and not know who's who, it was very satisfying for me.
That's good to hear. And it really, you can't really go back and change the past, but it does give you a testimony that is very helpful to a lot of these fighters and these young men that are looking to you for their guidance and their wisdom. So that is really, there's nothing to be ashamed of on that one, Joe. You can always look forward, and you got a great testimony that we can all admire at this point. Even listeners for this show, I know, are going to be uplifted by this. There was a segue that I can pull you back into this. Since you did commentary with King of the Cage, I know that you've been in the cage with him. I don't want to go through every single fight you've been through, because you've been through some wars. But I have to mention one. I have to mention Kenny Florian, because right now a lot of people, whenever he comes out and does commentators on Instagram, or when he gives out his stuff on BattleBots, and then he gives some thoughts on current day fighting, there's people that have backlash on him and go, "Oh, you should just stick with BattleBots. You're outdated. You've actually been in there with the veterans of this sport. So what is if somebody is with his MMA IQ, when Kenny Florian speaks on current day MMA, should fans be listening to him instead of trying to be an armchair cage warrior?"
Well, this is my opinion on it. First of all, Kenny's a great man. Second of all, he was a great fighter. And to me, I feel almost once a fighter, always a fighter.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how you can say anything else. Once a fighter, always a fighter is how I see it, because, you always got one more round in you. You never know what's going to happen. And if someone you love, you're going to have to stand up for, or hopefully not because you're drinking and making those mistakes. And this is my opinion on Kenny. Kenny was able to think outside the box so much. He was like, well, if I can't beat the guy here, I'm going to cut him with an elbow. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And I don't think people understand fighting is figuring out any way to win. And the adversity of your other opponent trying to what is the saying? The saying is you want to impose your will on your opponent. So in the midst of this freak athlete that's trying to impose his will on you, you're supposed to come up with some type of strategy to be able to defeat him, whether you like the strategy or not. That has no bearing on anything. Well, I don't like people that take people down and hold them. I don't like people that are trying to cut them. It's a fight. On the contract it says we could die. As far as and that our family can't sue them.
Yeah, right.
The contract, that's not a joke at all. So when I think about this, I think Kenny did such a good job thinking while he was in there. He's even better at thinking while he's outside. Whether or not you like his opinion is up to your discretion. However, I've always found best that even a great coach can learn from his student, because the student may ask you, well, why does that work? And the coach will have to reanalyze it and understand it in a better way to where now he can teach it. And so I think that maybe if you have a problem with somebody's personality, you may not like their commentary. That might be where that relates. But if you really are going to be open as a fan or as a fighter, as somebody that's trying to be entertained, I think you have to put whether or not you like their personality to the side. I personally love Kenny's personality. He said some of the funniest things. We were in the car one time. I can't even repeat. It was a very hilarious joke between him and Kirk Pellegrino.
Okay.
And I laughed and I told it back to my friends, and I'm going to refuse to tell it to you guys. But by the way, when they said that joke, we were all in the car, leaving away and getting ready to beat each other up. So to be able to be calm when stuff's about to hit the fan, that's very amazing. And if you listen, you may not agree with anything, but a lot of times commentators have little points or little things that they see that hopefully you can find and relate with. It's difficult, though, because you guys kind of have to be connected. You know, when your commentator needs to tell you a story, and as he's telling you the story of what's happening, you know, you got to pretend it's like a radio show. And as he's telling you that, if the action may lull, his job is to say something that might give you a reason why the fighter is doing that. Well, he's circling to his left because that's away from the power of his opponent, and his opponent hits really hard. But really, you want to hear he's circling to the left, looking to land the right hand, watching out for the opponent's cross as he moves, you know. But it's hard. It's very easy to be a great commentator if you have great fights on, because all you got to do is call what's happening. When you get some fights that are kind of having lulls, it's difficult because then you have to give people, you know, assessments, and if those people don't understand those assessments, if they've never personally been in there, it's difficult for them to relate. And then a lot of people that have been in there, you know, they fought totally different. You know, some of us are brawlers, some of us are boxers, some of us are wrestlers. It's important to try to touch all of those things. I think Kenny does a great job.
I hope everybody on my show just listened to that analysis, because once again, before you reach for the keyboard and you want to become a warrior on that side, hear what Joe Day just shared tonight, because I think that sums everything up to a T. That was beautifully said, sir. Now that I've got you on this one, you've mentioned Kenny Florian in the car, about to go at it with him. I understand not sharing the joke, but what I will ask is, coming to current day, you've also been in a war with a particular guy who is on the rise in the UFC right now. You've been in the cage with Nate Diaz, and he now officially, as of yesterday, I think, or maybe even today, I think it was yesterday, have officially announced that him and Jorge Masvidal are going to be stepping in the cage at Madison Square Garden. So anything you want to share on Nate Diaz, or anything you see about this upcoming fight? Because I'm excited about this one.
Well, I've coached kids my whole life, since I was like 15, 16 years old. And whenever there's siblings, the youngest is always the toughest. Mm-hmm. Because he had an older brother to push him. And now, not saying that the youngest can beat the oldest, but there comes a time that the youngest passes the oldest, because the oldest didn't have an oldest to beat him up, to teach, to share. And Nate is the epitome of coming from a great family of fighters, and coming from a great a position in his life that he had adversity and had to do everything he could to get out of where he was at, and fight harder and harder and harder. And it was a way out and an outlet for him, and he's done a great job. I think he is very dangerous. I think a lot of people make the mistake of trying to finish him. When I fought him, I was peppering him from ground and pound, and he looked up to me and he goes, "Is that all you got, Joe Dad? Is that all you got?" And I go, "No." And I looked right at his in the face, and I said, "But it's the game plan." and he got quiet real quick. And we didn't talk too much more after that. We said a few things, but it was important for me not to allow him to get in my head, and to just do what it took to win, which I had a guillotine on him, and I could have tried to finish the guillotine and might have gassed out my arms, but instead I used it for a sweep. If you try to finish Nate, sometimes it can work against you, and that's when him or his brother Nick capitalize, and they take it to you. And Masvidal is a great fighter, but he's going to have to be careful. He's probably not going to fight him the same way that he fought, that he just fought Ben Askren. Like,
sure,
that might be a mistake. You know, maybe he's going to show Nate a little bit of respect. Will that be too much respect? Will it be not enough respect? You know, only the fight's going to tell us, and that's why we're going to buy that, because we want to see what happens.
Very valid point. And another guy that's really risen to the top now just has his victory that is fighting for that respect right now versus where everybody stands is Khabib. And I know you got a chance to watch the fight last night with Khabib and Poirier. What kind of uphill battles is he going to face at this point now in the sport? What do you think?
Well, if he can beat Tony Ferguson,
sure,
which Tony Ferguson is very impressive, very dangerous in a lot of different spots. You know, the threat on the ground may take away the aggression from Khabib's takedowns as much. I mean, Dustin is an amazing fighter, and I believe it was very hot in that room that they were fighting in because he was breathing heavily in that second. And I think that a lot of times the fight is circumstantial. Altitude, you know, what's happening in each fighter's life, where have they been mentally, things like that. I think Khabib's done a great job of keeping all circumstances out and just focusing on making it a fight. Tony's dangerous, but the God honest truth is if Tony doesn't defend that takedown or isn't prepared for that grind, he's going to have a very difficult time on his hands. You see, when you're a grinder fighter, not only do you grind away at your opponents, but you grind away at yourself. My friend Burt Watson, who was Joe Frazier's manager, also was, he ran the back at the UFC for a very long time. He told me, he goes, every great fighter has just so many fights in them, Joe, and then they don't have any more in them because, you know, these shots, they take a toll. And now thinking as a grinder, every grinder is going to have so much grind in them, but as you grind your opponent, you also grind yourself. And it's going to be difficult. God only truth, like the truth is, if you're going to beat Khabib, you got to take him down before he takes you down.
Absolutely.
You see, there's a big difference between takedown offense and takedown defense. Some people have great takedown defense, but they're great and don't have great takedown offense. Some people have great takedown offense and great takedown defense, but don't have hands. So or kicks and stuff like that. So you got to figure out if your opponent's going to take you down. One of the best things to do is take them down first. Now, whether or not they're beasts on their back and you got to put up with submissions and stuff, now that's another thing that you have to take into consideration. Dan Gable said, the more you're on your opponent's legs, the less they are on yours. So if you can look to use that in fighting, it's going to take you far. And I mean, I coach a kid named Juan Archuleta who's fighting Pitbull for the title in Bellator, and he is one of the best grinders in the world by far, and he's got hands and moves. I would like to see him fight Khabib. Too bad they're in different organizations,
right?
but for sure I could see him taking it to Khabib. But let's see what God writes in our books of life here.
Sure. I mean, that's the thing I love that you say that because, again, I've been following Pitbull's career and against him and Michael Chandler, and now him being part of the featherweight tournament and the brackets. Again, I'm very impressed with him, but I love to see what competition he's got. So I got a guy to look to now. While we're on Bellator at this point, one last guy I do want to ask about, just because he's been the Ultimate Fighter too. He's been both UFC and Bellator. He's the current day heavyweight champion of the world. I'm not sure how much you know Ryan Bader, but we have controversy with him now with this fight with Congo. Did you by chance see what happened with the eye?
You said the current heavyweight champions of Bellator, and almost last night that was changed.
Yes.
Because if Mike Beltran wouldn't have called it an accidental eye poke, which on the video that I saw, it looked like maybe it was his left hand, then for sure it was his right hand. Looked like different fingers, and it almost looked like it was game planned to maul the face a little bit.
Right.
Especially because, but I don't know,
right.
I know Ryan Bader's a great fighter, and Mike Beltran caught it. And when Mike Beltran caught that, I don't think anyone else in the world saw it. until they stopped and showed the replay, and it was like, wow. First of all, probably going to go down as one of the best refs ever.
Exactly.
For catching things like that. And then second of all, that you see that video enough times, and I don't know if I would have thought that it was by accident. It could have very well been intentional, but difficult to say because in the heat of a battle.
Sure.
I think Ryan Bader even grabbed the fence, though.
Right.
So I guess to put this to rest is I can't wait to watch them rematch. I mean, right now it's going to be very dangerous for Ryan because he showed what he's going to do. So now, Czech can go back and kind of game plan to deliver some big shots. Because size doesn't matter. That's why there's weight classes.
Sure.
That's why everyone's like, well, how come Brock Lesnar gets a title fight right away? Because he's a beast and he will take it to you. If he gets on top of you, you're not getting him off you at all.
Right. I mean, again, I've actually praised Mike Beltran on this show before because I think part of it was because of how he lit into Jake Hager on that fight that he had there. So again, that's a testimony to how good he is. I definitely can agree with you on that one, Joe. Man, we've covered a lot of content. I've only got two more things to ask before I let you go, sir. Again, very appreciative of your time. I kind of want to see what you're into current day. Do you still have the Cobra Kai gym, or what other endeavors are you part of these days?
Well, I coach at Cobra Kai on Tuesday, Thursdays, and Friday nights.
Mm-hmm.
I have some great fighters there. There's a kid named Dominic Reyes who's fighting Chris Weidman, and the winner probably gets a title fight in the UFC. Then there's another kid, Jamal Pogues, who just won the Contender. I get guys like Jesus Moreno. I have Robert Hernandez, some guys that unfortunately now are in the military and had to, support family, and luckily the U.S. Army was able to take care of them, and they've done great in the combative training.
Absolutely.
And I'm very proud of where I'm at. I get to work with a lot of children. I'm the coach for the USFL. The USFL is the Youth Concretion, or around the world it's known as Youth MMA. We won the World Championships in Rome, Italy. We beat Russia. We beat all these other teams by far. We were hands down at first. We had some of the best fighters, youth athletes in the world coming out of the United States. And we have no government funding at all. So it's very difficult. We throw events and all the money goes towards like the kids' enrollment fees to the World Championships, things like that. I also coach for Dan Henderson on Mondays and Wednesdays. Mm-hmm. I run his jiu-jitsu program there. My buddy Tom Glicchio helps me out there. And so I currently work with a lot of the Team Quest fighters over there in Temecula. And on Fridays in the morning, I work at the training lab where I still get to meet up with one of my fighters, Juan Archuleta, and some great guys over there in Anaheim under Coach Calavita and Mark Munoz. Mm-hmm. So I'm very busy.
It sounds like it. We'll definitely do what we can for you over here at the Blockhead Nation. We'll make sure and get those links up for the USFA and everything else you're involved with in Cobra Kai so we can get your kids noticed. I'm thrilled with that, Joe, and I'll make sure we put those up on the blog page. At least let's get the word out for this guy. The one last thing I'll ask you before I let you go, Joe, normally with my guests, I ask them if there was one thing in case they heard nothing else from you today. Maybe it's philosophy, maybe it's a faith walk, maybe it's something that matters truly to you. What is one thing that you would want listeners to remember from you today that you shared on this show?
Well, I would think that something that's very important that was told to me by one of my old coaches, Irving Downs, he had said, 10% of your life is going to be out of your control. And, bad things are going to happen. And 90% of the rest of your life will be defined by how you react to that 10%. And I think that's important. Maybe Tony Robbins said it, and my coach copied him.
Possibly.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But for sure, that's something that I'd like to do passed on. And to like anyone that's, a teenager trying to make it in the sport, it's like, don't catch yourself drinking and partying over local show victories and things when there's so much more to work on and do, because you're going to find yourself taking back steps, and it's going to be putting you in a very bad position. You're not going to advance as fast as others because you're continuing to take steps back.
Absolutely. Beautifully said, Joe. Again, I'm super appreciative that I could have you on today, man. And for my listeners that are out there, as we wrap this up, guys, my one last link I'm going to put up is for something called the Blade Tap. The 3-in-1 razor unclogger, sharpener, and holder. Cut your shave time in half, save money, no wasted water, and sharpen your blades for a smooth and comfortable shave every time. Go to the link for this podcast, check out the link for the Blade Tap, and when you get to checkout, to get yourself 20% off of this product, make sure you use the promo code TAPITCLEAN. All one word, TAPIT, clean. All that, and get you 20% off of your purchase from the Blade Tap. That's one way to help out the show. If you use a Koa Coffee, if you use the Blade Tap, that's a quick way to support me. But in the meantime, we're going to make sure we get all these links up. They'll be available in the blog page for Joe Stevenson, for his team, and for his kiddos. And just knowing he has the heart of a coach and he continues to love on these guys that are trying to make it in the fighting world. Again, Joe, thank you so much for coming on, sir. I'm humbled, and I bid you adieu.
Thank you very much, Brian. Take care.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. And with that, guys, we'll see you next time. Same Blockhead time, same Blockhead channel.